Hello, it's Keith Wilson with IDFL. This is a quick little introduction to down feather and odor evaluation. What I wanted to kind of go through first off today was basically just starting off and understanding basically what is the odor test. Second of all, how is it actually tested, and then some common problems and solutions. So starting off with, why would you go through and actually perform a test? First off, number one reason is that sales of down or products are impeded by odor. Some clients have reported that 85% of their down products returns are attributed to odor issue. Generally, if you have such a close proximity to a bedding product, that no one wants to have a smelly product, and so a good smelling product is always essential. Only some countries actually regulate odor, however, and regulation is the second reason that is always a key attribute of good quality products. Korea and Taiwan and China are the only three countries that actually regulate it from the known standards around the world. The difficulty with odor, however, is that down is the odor can actually appear and disappear as you can actually see with this little ghost. The odor can originate from multiple different causes, and it can appear and disappear without being recognized. The process for actually testing odor, however, is first off you're grabbing 10 grams of down and adding some distilled water to that, mixing that together in a jar, and then actually putting that in the oven for 24 hours. At the completion of the 24 hours, then the jar is taken out and smelled by 5 individual analysts, and an average of each one of their results is reported. The whole process within IDFL, however, is a bit more complex. This here, what you can see here, is an evaluation worksheet. When we receive samples, if there's any type of inclination of an odor, then we go through and actually kind of make that note to the client, and the client can decide whether they want a full odor evaluation or not. But every sample that arrives at IDFL is in fact actually tested for odor. It's just basically tested when the box is actually open. Next of all, then you have the later odor of the sample. Once again, as I mentioned previously, that the odor ghost can actually appear and disappear as you will, and just sometimes maybe that's actually because maybe the odor might have a very strong odor as a result of the packaging material. Sometimes plastics and boxes can actually have a very strong odor. Sometimes they actually, and then when it's actually removed from the box, sometimes it will actually also have a little bit better odor after it's actually been sitting 24 hours in a conditioning room. Once again, after it's been conditioned maybe for a while, we're actually going to go through and actually smell it again, see if there's any inclination of the increase or decrease of the odor, see if it's actually dissipated or if it has actually expanded just a wee bit more. If the client requests, once again, we can always go through and actually do the 5-nose test. And then there's also a lot of other different types of comments that are available throughout the different process of the process within the laboratory. The odor rating is just a general 1 to 5 scale. A 1 would actually be an extreme fail. That would actually smell like unwashed or plumage directly out of the slaughterhouse, where it has been contaminated with a lot of different other bacterial agents. Recently, within the last few years, IDFL has not received a lot of bulk samples or raw plumage. Most of the stuff that actually is received at the laboratory is always a pre-washed sample, so the variations that we're actually seeing is a lot more between a 3, 4, and a 5 rather than a 1 or a 2. However, occasionally, for different reasons, we do actually run into a 1 or a 2 sample. There is a Korean testing method that is very similar. This is actually listed right here. Here's also a sample report from an IDFL test method. So once again, you can actually see right here the different steps, so 1 through 8 steps. Odor when it actually arrives, the initial odor sample, later odor of the sample, moving on to the odor of the packaging, smelling the odor of the packaging to see if it actually has any types of an influence. There's also a Chinese method. This is you can also see the correlation here with the IDFL method. Generally, a 5 is actually the best, 4 is actually kind of like a little bit of a caution, 3 is a borderline, 2 is a fail, and then 1 is the very worst result. The Chinese method is actually inverse of that, whereas 0 odor is actually the very best, but then a 1, 2, 3 is, a 3 is a very strong smell. Going on to actually addressing the issue, once again, identifying of the odor generally only helps with actually kind of identifying claims for between processor and buyer. The actually addressing the issue that, however, can be a little bit more complex. Let me kind of go over a few of these different topics, and hopefully this will actually help you in your odor issues. First off, actually recognizing that everything has odor. This is actually a key component. Whether it's actually cotton, wool, polyester, alpaca, or any other different types of natural or synthetic materials. Natural materials will always have their natural smell. Synthetic materials will have a little bit decrease of a smell, unless it's actually mismanufactured, in which case it'll actually be a very chemically type of a smell. But any time that anybody gets caught in a rainstorm out in the weather, if they get this moisture and their body has this natural odor, when they get home it's going to be pretty strong odor, and that's not always a direct relation to the material. Generally, just like yourself, after taking a shower, then you'll generally smell a little better. The products are very similar to that. So generally, after washing or drying out the apparel or the article, will be a lot more successful. There are all the rest of the different causes, though, and I do want to kind of go through each one of those. The first one is obviously when the down is going through the washing process, there might be a little bit of residual bacteria on the face of the down. This might be odor-causing bacteria or other different types of odor molecules. The classification of odor is generally directed towards the specific person. It's going to be very subjective to retailers, lab personnel, and consumers. And it kind of depends upon what an individual person is actually accustomed to. In regards to special cases such as age, culture, sex, generally age, sometimes people younger or older can actually smell things just a little bit differently. Culture, generally if you go to different customs, maybe different types of things make your mouth water, it might make the other person actually kind of feel like they actually want to vomit. Sex, generally women are a lot more susceptible to stronger and better smell capabilities. And there's also the preference or the taste, maybe just depending upon your surroundings, where you grew up, or any of the different types of variations within an individual person. A lot of different things can actually affect what a person actually kind of deems as something very, very, very good smelling versus something that is very offensive. The causes of odor, however, can actually begin once again. Generally, white duck is generally the strongest smelling. Geese, not so much. Also, the feather versus the down. The feather generally has a little bit more of a chasm within the quill point of the feather, so it actually allows a lot more bacteria to be held in there. And there's also a lot more of the material inside of the feather to allow a little bit more bacteria to be there. We also occasionally see different things regarding the color. Sometimes white. Once again, as I mentioned, white duck feathers is generally going to be the strongest smelling. White duck feathers, however, regardless of how fragrant the sample can actually be, generally through correct processing and cleansing of the sample, the odor should actually dissipate quite significantly. There are a few problems within the procedures here. What you can actually see on this slide is basically the production processes. Occasionally different types of things, such as people taking the down and actually dumping it on the ground prior to manufacturing. This can cause a lot of problems. Down and feathers are very good at actually collecting dust and dirt from anywhere. As you can actually imagine, a feather duster goes through and actually collects dust very efficiently. Other types of things, such as making sure that the sterilization permit practices are actually followed, the amount of the product within the machinery. If the machinery is only dedicated towards maybe 20 kilos of material, if 40 kilos of material is actually put in the sterilization chamber, that can also cause a little bit of an unclean amount of down. Also, the different types of things. A lot of different people are always watching and seeing what they can actually do as far as actually upgrading the different cleansing agents. Specific manufacturers may be more efficient at actually finding the optimal cleansing agents as opposed to maybe newer manufacturers. Improper down storage can also be a problem. As you can see here, this is actually a bag of down that is going to be absorbed. And this is very interesting for the fact that sometimes you might only see, odor issues maybe with 10 or 15 jackets. It might just be that those 10 or 15 jackets were actually the 10 or 15, it was the material within like the one sample that got wet. The rest of the products might not have a problem, but that one specific bag of down that sat in the water, as you can see here, might actually kind of cause a problem. So it's very important to also have good conditions within the down processing, making sure that the manufacturer has adequate facilities to house, store, and maintain the dry atmosphere the down needs. Also, the picture on the bottom right, you can also see that there is also a whole bunch of material that's sometimes stored outdoors. This generally is not a problem, but it can actually happen depending upon the capacity of the specific facility and the storage capabilities of the factory itself. There's also other different types of problems. As you can see right here, this is actually some down being transported within China to another processing facility to meet a client's order. Manufacturing to the retailer, there can be a lot of different problems within the manufacturing, within the shipping. There can be a lot different types of conditions in each one of the different warehouses, but every one of these different attributes is respective to the overall handling or the expertise of the manufacturer and the processor. As I mentioned before, sometimes there's also production processes that actually kind of cause a little bit of problems. For example, clients who actually shrink wrap and use maybe tight plastic bags to package their materials can maybe see a little bit stronger odor when the material arrives in the final location in the retailer facility. Post-purchase, generally, if there is ever any type of an odor within the product, generally we recommend clients to maybe air that out in a storage facility, or maybe allowing a little bit of airing out in different locations. After purchase, a client should also be aware of being aware of actually how to handle the materials itself. The client needs to understand how to care for a label is really key and can really help making sure that the longevity of the product is extended as much as possible. Generally, we recommend just a warm wash, a light soap, and making sure the material is cleanly and thoroughly dried. Hang drying typically is not recommended. Next of all, here we have the moisture or bacteria can also enter the cells in the down and develop odor. As you can actually see this on a bacterial stage right here. This is actually showing the very, very intricate types of, the chasm within the actual feather quill itself. They might actually allow a little bit more odor to reside there a little bit longer, depending upon how accessible it is to bacteria and how the material has been washed. A general solution of what we've generally recommended to clients is making sure that the down is properly cleansed. Meeting and achieving the fat and oil requirements within the respective country will usually be sufficient. Fat and oil, you don't want to have too much. That causes odor. A little bit too less makes the down so it's not properly It makes it so it's not properly healthy enough for it to actually be resilient. You can also see here the oxygen. A low oxygen indicates a low bacteria level. Bioburden in microbiology is another test that is also supporting the amount of bacteria material on the face of the down. You can also see here a very high turbidity is also very helpful. Just making sure that the down is actually cleaned properly. Sometimes also pH can actually help a little bit, depending upon the particular problem. Anything that is actually moist and hot is always going to have a very strong odor. So you also want to watch your moisture. And I already mentioned the composition, your feather to down ratio. The more feather that you actually have, the stronger the smell. The less feather that you have, the better the smelling is going to be. And also the species. If you're always sourcing white duck down, You might get away with that, but white duck feathers is generally going to be a little bit more stronger, a little bit more fragrant. Other solutions that you actually have, and might actually going to be using different types of treatments or odor masking agents. So very often on the market, we've actually seen things like wine dyed or tea dyed, maybe lavender enhanced or citrus or other multiple other different types of fragrances. There can also be a production shift. I mean, as you're actually going around and actually tagging how much material you've actually kind of taken through your washing facility, logging that, and keeping track of your production. Inside of any type of fat manufacturing facility, time is money, and so any time that excessive amounts of down is introduced into the washing supply chain or into the washing process, the material might not get as clean as you would like. You can also see the evaluation, obviously the species, the water cleanliness, the cleanliness agents, and the other treatments that are actually being introduced into the supply chain can also have an effect on that. Retail education is also another strong attribute of actually having a very successful down sales program. Making sure that the care label is obvious, making sure that consumers know how to actually treat their product in order to make sure that you get as many years out of the product as possible. And I already previously mentioned the airing out of the product previous to purchase. Sometimes when clients actually take it home, if it's actually been shrink wrapped for shipping purposes or anything of that nature, including something in there actually acknowledging the odor would also be very helpful. There are also a lot of other different types of test methods and a lot of other different types of solutions, but this has been some kind of a collection of different ways that other different clients have actually addressed this. One other solution that we've actually seen is also adding on, making sure that your silica gel packs are actually, or your granulated charcoal is also inserted into the product. Many times that you'll actually see this maybe in the pockets of a jacket or maybe just inserted into the center of the quilt. It's very important to make sure that the silica gel packs are actually, make sure that they're not being exposed to moisture, very high moisture amounts prior to being inserted into the product. If they are, then you're going to not see the benefit of the silica gel absorbing those different types of those moisture attributes. Typical recommendations for each one of the different tests I've actually just mentioned is an oxygen less than 4.8. A turbidity generally between 500 or over 1,000 is also very good. Once again, a fat and oil, you're usually looking for right about 1%. As low as moisture as possible is usually optimal, but it kind of depends upon where the material is coming from and how much moisture is actually being absorbed, whether it's actually a down or a feather product. Some other general solutions is using less duck, using more down, and also looking at the storage and filling protocols. Just as a quick summary, down odors can appear and disappear. It's very difficult to actually quantify and qualify the testing. Once again, we have no idea what's actually happened along in the supply chain. We can actually kind of evaluate the odor based upon other samples of what is actually possible within the industry. But it's very difficult to actually nail down one particular cause of the odor within a particular product. The best way to eliminate odor is to choose a good factory and make sure that the sufficient testing is occurring. That's just a quick little overview of down and feather odor testing, and I hope this is actually helpful for you, and have yourself a great day. Thanks.